Welcome to another edition of Sunday Soul, a soulful conversation. You gotta imagine you're having brunch with somebody, that easy feeling on Sunday. That's what we do here at Sunday Soul. Musicians, artists, sports people, just interesting people in general that you want to pull the curtain back. You want to know more about them. And I don't know that for me, there's a person that is more interesting and more entertaining than my friend, Adley Stump. Adley, how are you, my dear?
I'm so good, sister. So honored to be here chatting with you.
You know, I was thinking about this as I was getting ready for the show, and I was like, okay, we have played in golf tournaments together. We have boogied together till late night. Early. We've gone to church together and sang together. We've laughed together. We've celebrated monumental birthdays together. I remember, and I know we're going to talk a lot about him later this year. I remember when you first met Blake and you were in a buddy suit at a bar.
I think that was like our third time to like hang out, get to know each other, and I'm wearing a onesie. Nothing's changed. In this bar, that was such a fun night.
Yeah.
We were playing trivia, I think, weren't we?
We were playing trivia, and we're going to get to Blake. We're going to get to all that. Let me do this first. Let me introduce, for anybody that may not have seen her on Good Morning America, MSF, all the different places she's been featured on lately, because I think your humor has gotten a lot of us through this quarantine and helped us to not take ourselves so seriously. But you were originally on The Voice. You had aspirations of being a singer. And then you made a pivot. And I want to talk about that pivot, Adley Stump, but kind of tell us a little bit in your words about your background and a little bit about yourself.
I love that you call it a pivot, because it's so true. And it was a long, I want to say overdue pivot, but you can't think of anything that way. I think the timing was perfect, because half the things that are happening now in my life would not have happened had I done that any earlier. So I got my start in the entertainment industry from The Voice. I auditioned, I think I was a senior in college, and it was a dare from my sorority sisters. Because I was going to school to do PR, marketing. I was not trying to be a big country music singer, but I never turned down a dare. So say yes to everything, except drugs, not drugs. But always in life, I've always been a taster and trying things just to see what I like, see what feels like home. And then just leaning into that and seeing where it led me. I think that lends itself to the spirit of not taking myself too seriously, or many things too seriously, because knowing it's just a stepping stone. Nothing is forever except for our faith and eternity, and hope and love and all that good stuff. But that's just kind of how I always lived my life. So when I ended up on Team Blake, it was like, that was a joke. Like, this was a dare. I have no qualifications. I'm not a singer. I don't know what I'm doing. But I had so many friends who would love to be a singer. Like, they were going for that. They would have given their left leg for that to happen to them. And here I am, like, And so that was when I knew that was going to be a huge moment for me. And a lot of eyeballs and attention. I just told God, I said, okay, I will earn everything else. If you've given me this platform, I know that it's my job to make it purposeful. And it's not any achievement of any size is not just for Adley to feel better about herself. If I'm blessed financially, it's not just so Adley can have a lot of money. What am I being entrusted with? And so I learned that with The Voice, and kind of being unprepared for that off the bat, because I knew I wasn't really there on my own merit, because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And I asked God very clearly, and this is always kind of one of the North Stars that I live by, is I prayed and almost heard this audible voice, as audible as I could feel something, And I said, God, I was going to school to like speak and encourage and inspire people and work with this nonprofit. Like that was my mindset, what I was going to do. Now here I am in Nashville. I've got a record deal and I'm going to be on this #1 show in America as a singer. I don't know how to really even do this. And I thought I was going to go do this. And I felt like this wave come over me. And it's like he said, I just gave you a stage and a microphone and a voice you didn't know you had. What do you think you're supposed to do with it? go speak, go encourage, go inspire people. I just gave you a much bigger platform than you were going to give yourself. And so I was like, all right, here we go. And it's been my job, as I've interpreted it, to continue to be a good steward of those opportunities, of those gifts, and to slide into heaven someday saying, I used everyone that I could find. I used everything you gave me. And so that's been the journey. And so I moved to Nashville and was just, all right, I'm a country music singer. Here we go. This is awesome. This is so much fun. I always loved music. Never dreamed that I would be in this position. Always had a performer's personality. And so I just walked into this with open arms and an excited spirit. And I think some of the first big friction points for me where I was like, this is hard for me, were a suit behind a desk giving me permission or not to be successful, telling me when and where and how and why and in what manner and weight, and dictate the level of success that I was going to have. And I just, as a self-starter and a go-getter, started clubs and things and all throughout my life. I was always a starter and a creator. And so I can sit and write, songs all day, every day, like everybody in this town. But man, I want to be in charge of how they get out there. If I'm creating them, I don't want you to be the one that says the market's ready or you're good enough, And so I wanted to do more personality driven stuff. I didn't feel like my worth as an entertainer was predicated on just, here's a song, now judge me. I knew I had so much more back here that I could offer instead of just what you were judging me on was that song or the credentials or all that. So a friend of mine in town owned a large Instagram network, and he was like, you got a personality, start making videos for us that we can seamlessly integrate our advertisers into, like a Flow from Progressive. And so I started leaning into that a little bit more.
You just said Flow from Progressive. You just compared yourself to Flow from Progressive.
Well, he was like, the brand has a face to it, a personality, and Flo can talk about this towel. Or Flo
I
can
love
play
you
that.
for this. I love you for this. Keep going. I couldn't let that. Yeah.
No.
Adley,
Flo's way cooler. Let's be real.
No, Adley's way cooler. But anyway, go ahead.
Adley's just her own thing. Isn't it so weird how you just get conditioned to talk about yourself as a product?
Yeah.
But so I loved that. I loved that I could have an emotion just as I would write it down in a song and then spend $5,000 to produce it and record it, develop it, even more in marketing to put it out into the world. But it's free anyways. So then you're not recouping the money that way. So you got to tour to support it. And you're going to spend thousands of dollars to tour to build this fan base where nobody's there yet, but they will be someday if you just keep feeding the machine. And I was like, I'm not built for that. I just knew something in my spirit that wasn't gonna be my way. But I did it for a little while and I'm so grateful for it. And I have the best memories. I'm so glad I have that portion of my life. But again, it's a taste and pivot, and just always going with kind of where you feel led to go. Why am I uniquely me? Why are you uniquely you? Yes. What do you have that nobody else has? Why is your shoe better than the next shoe, better than the next shoe? What is your unique selling point? And how can you utilize that to go all chips in there and differentiate yourself? No, I'm going to create the shoe and I got to tell you why it's different and get it out there myself. So when it was about 2 years where I was kind of riding this line of making funny videos and some would pop and some would not pop. But I just still have this long-term mindset. It's not living and dying by the next video or the next song or the next trial, the next whatever it is. And so it's about 2 years of just kind of floating. Everybody saying, hey, you're onto something, but what are you trying to do? What do you want? How can I help? And I'm like, I don't really know what I want. I know I want to entertain and I want to do what I'm doing now and it feels good and I want to do it at a bigger level. And eventually that same mentor who gave me the opportunity to make videos was like, do you want to be the next biggest country music star in the world? And I'm like, not really. And he goes, then why are you spending 20 to 40% of your time still putting that message out there to be consistent to the narrative that you told the world once? And that you didn't even necessarily choose, but you've leaned into, and it's opened a lot of doors and given you this platform. If you don't want what's at the end of this path, go all chips in with this opportunity you have with Facebook, and you're in a really unique position. Go all in on that, Adley. Go all in on one damn thing for 6 months and see what happens. Because I would be so widespread. I would move the needle incrementally in a bunch of different places in my life instead of focusing on 1 to 2 things that were really gonna elevate my brand. And so when I took that advice, and just, that was the hardest thing to do, Rachel, is to say, this has been my narrative for 8 years. Subconsciously, even, we all have that subconscious narrative, you know, and you don't even realize that you have it until you step out and say, here's how I'm operating, here's how I'm thinking, here's what I'm doing, subconsciously. It's like a foot on the gas pedal. You're driving, but not thinking about what you're doing. You're just operating in that mode.
You know, Adley, I think I think so many people are going to relate to that, because so many people are operating in a narrative. And I did it too. When I stopped sportscasting last fall to go 1,000% in on I'm changing the narrative, I remember calling one of my girlfriends who worked at the college football playoff, Gina Leahy, and she's now at the NCAA, and she's a great mentor friend of mine. And she said, you are more than a sportscaster. Don't be afraid. And it was the same thing that I was teaching my athletes, that you're more than an athlete, but yet I was dealing with my own identity crisis, my own narrative, my own, and even still, I'm like, it's still strange. It's different, and it's something you come to terms with, but I love that. And I also think, Adley, there's something to that in this time of quarantine, that there's going to be a lot of people that don't go back to that narrative, or are starting to deeply question who they are and what they're supposed to be doing.
I agree, because we're in a time where we love our control, right? But the things that we worship, our athletes, our movies, our celebrities, our events, our concerts, those milestone things that we look forward to and find purpose in, that's all been stripped from us. We are forced to be still and look at what actually matters in life, and that's human relationships and how we treat each other in the state of our life and our families. And we're being forced to look up and around in what's in front of us immediately, like physically being stuck at home to look and observe the state of our life. And so many people immediately and obviously want to be like, oh my God, this sucks. But in every sucky situation, there is an opportunity. And I and you and so many of us have had to train ourselves. That is a muscle that you exercise, because we say that things suck and become fearful for self-preservation. But if you can turn that switch off, get rid of that narrative and say, there is so much opportunity in the valley, in the pain, in the dip, in the trial. And what got me here today are not the same set of tools that are going to get me to the next mountaintop. So when you're in a valley, the quicker you figure out what tools you're supposed to pick up down here and do the work, the quicker you're going to get out of this valley and get to the next mountaintop, right? Girl. So we're all, so much of our world right now is in this valley. Figure out what you're supposed to learn. Figure out how you can grow and develop and change your family, change your life, what you don't like about where you just came from. Now you've got the time to fix it. Necessity is the best teacher. I went bankrupt after The Voice and signed some really crappy deals. I thought all my friends are up here from the show. They're signing record deals. They're going on major tours. They're superstars. I had the same experience, but I'm down here filing from bankruptcy, can't put gas in my car, going through litigate, like all this crappy stuff. But I was sure that was meant for me, right? He put me in that situation. That's what this was supposed to be. But here I am. Most of these people weren't making music a year, 2 years later down the line. They're not even entertainment anymore. The necessity of being down here and figuring out what I wanted, what it looked like, and learning how to fight for it got the green out of me real fast. And it built a tenacity that I am so thankful for. It taught me how to solve problems. It taught me how to solve other people's problems that would get what I needed to the market. It was the best time ever. And I would not be half of the person that I am or try to be today if that crap hadn't happened. Ooh. And like what we're going through right now, if people can put that filter on, choose that filter, that lens, then they're going to look back like we do at every situation in hindsight and say, that makes sense. I'm glad that trial happened. I'm glad. And we just know that's coming, maybe 2 years down the line even, maybe 20 years down the line. But we know it's coming, that this time is going to make sense. And we're going to look back at our lives we're going to look back at this time in 2 years, 5 years, and say, here's what happened during that time. Write your story, write your narrative right now. What did this time do for you? Did it weaken you, or did it make you stronger? That's your choice.
Oh, Adley, you're like, so much of the stuff I've been saying, so much of it, you are echoing, and it makes me so happy. And I've been telling people, you're writing the book of your life right now. So you want to make sure that it's a good book, right? And so you're going to read it 5 years later, 10 years later, 20 years later.
Yeah.
You make sure it's a good book. I always say too, I heard this on a talk show, Dr. Laura, one late night driving home from a sports event. And this guy called in and asked her about this decision he could make or should make. And she said, make the decision that yourself in 20 years will be proud of. And I was like, ooh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's really like, you can apply that to whatever you do. And I even think about, we were talking about failure, and you're talking about what some people might perceive as failure when you talked about your bankruptcy. I'm real big, Adley, on taking off the mask. And shame and guilt will draw us down and weigh us down. I love how freely you talked about that. I really do. Because you took the chains of shame or anything or the ugliness right off of it. And you said, if not for that, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I think that is so beautiful, because I told somebody last night, failure, there really is for me, failure's not a thing. The failure is if I don't try, right? Like, because there's a lesson in everything. And I have to applaud you for how real you are when talking about that, because so many people need that.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Well, I take notes out of your book, authenticity, just like when you realize that your life doesn't really exist for you to feel better about yourself, the things that you go through. If I had kids and they were mimicking how I was sad about certain situations or victimized myself in certain situations, do I want them to pick up those habits? No. I feel like the best way to operate and make decisions sometimes is taking off that mask and zooming out. Would somebody be proud of me for this? Would I, most importantly, be proud of me for how I'm handling this situation, for how I'm acting? And it really does help you make decisions too. Like when you're kind of at a crossroads, and sometimes your gut can be a little bit jaded just by filters that we've put on it over the years. So how to kind of get those off and learn what does it look like? God's put me through the ringer the last 4, however many months since January 5 that we're in lately. And I can tell you some crazy stories about how he's retraining my gut and putting himself back in it. It's been a really wild ride lately.
What would you, I heard one time Ben Harper say back in the day, I'm a record manager's worst nightmare, like record store manager's worst nightmare. They don't know where to put me. They don't know whether to put me in the rock or the blues or if somebody was going to call you something, do you call yourself a comedian, an entertainer, an influencer? Like, what do you call yourself?
Fabulous question. I would say entertainer. I said this to somebody yesterday. People have been tempted lately to call me a comedian, and I wouldn't call myself a comedian. I think that's a totally different art than what I do. That's a different skill set. So it's kind of the difference between maybe being a singer and somebody who can sing. That's the biggest thing that I've rewritten in this pivot was, instead of being a singer who makes funny videos, is I'm an entertainer that can sing. It's just a talent in the wheelhouse rather than singer by trade. It's just a skill set in my toolbox because I want to be more than just a singer. And so I would say entertainer. It's the broadest sense of the word, because wrap marketer in there. We do so much branded content for brands, teach them how to not only develop better content, but then we distribute it widely for them as well. And marketing is one of my favorite parts of what I do. But I entertainment forward. So.
Can a company or a brand work with you? Like, how does that work? Because I know some people are going to be wanting to watch. They're watching this and going, I want to work with Adley. I want to work with Adley.
Oh yeah. So we work with me and my partners have a lot of Instagram and Facebook distribution. We can distribute up to about 1 million impressions an hour. So me being kind of the head of the content, the creative, I'll say, okay, we need to creatively integrate this wine, this sock, this whatever into a video. We help brands integrate their content into culture via memes, via viral style content at scale across Facebook, Instagram, TikTok.